Hello, today's video is a continuing video in our series on the Russian geometry pyramid research carried out by leading Russian scientists over the last 20 to 25 years, demonstrating the numerous energetic benefits to humanity through the use of Russian geometry pyramids. Today's video is entitled Russian Geometry Pyramids Improve Protective Ozone Layer. We did a recent video where we discussed, it was entitled Russian Geometry Pyramids Create Far-Reaching Energy Fields. And in that video we referenced the fact that the implications of some of that research were fairly far-reaching, and that we were going to be doing a separate video on the ozone layer, and that's what we're doing now. On the first page that's coming up, some of this is somewhat more anecdotal, and that's the reason why we decided to go ahead and make this a separate video. But according to Dr. Golod, the data about the size of the energy field, the amount of energy that's contained in the field, and also the other experimental results in the previous video indicate that the problems of the ozone layer of the planet, at least according to Dr. Golod, first in the Northern Hemisphere and then in the Southern Hemisphere, could disappear as a result of pyramids that were built in Russia. Although the building of pyramids in the Southern Hemisphere would hasten the recovery in the Southern Hemisphere, according to Dr. Golod. He continues on, ozone holes in the Northern Hemisphere disappeared within 4 to 5 months after the installation of a 22-meter pyramid on Lake Selenker in Russia. And he anticipated back when this was written that the disappearance of ozone holes on the planet would result as a result of a bigger pyramid that was subsequently built in 1999 near Moscow. And according to Dr. Golod, these results would be faster in the Southern Hemisphere if similar pyramids were built in Australia or in South America. An additional experiment that was carried out was a joint experiment with what's called RSC Energia, which is Russia's primary space mission contractor. And it started in 1998. And in that experiment, a cargo of quartz crystals and amethysts processed in the Russian geometry pyramid were sent aboard the Mir Space Station for some period of time, and several thousand orbits of the planet were formed or were made and formed, in Dr. Golod's view, an energy cocoon that changed the structure of the entire near-Earth space. Now, all of this information is somewhat anecdotal because it's very hard to prove any cause and effect directly between these activities, both the building of the pyramids and the taking of these crystals into space in the Mir Space Station. However, I thought it was valuable to go over this research in light of a recent paper that was put out. In November of this year, and it is it's a joint effort between 5 groups. It's called the World Meteorological Organization, the UN Environment Program, the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, NASA, and the European Commission, and it's entitled Scientific Assessment of Ozone Depletion 2018. And as you'll see on the next page, in their summary of results, they state that ozone depletion is caused by human-related emissions of ODSs, which means ozone-depleting substances, and the subsequent release of reactive halogen gases, especially chlorine and bromine, into the stratosphere. ODSs include chlorofluorocarbons, bromine-containing halides and methyl bromide, hydrochlorofluorocarbons, carbon tetrachloride, and methylchloroform. These substances controlled under the Montreal Protocol are listed in an index in the study. These ODSs are long-lived and are also powerful greenhouse gas emitters. And as a consequence of the Montreal Protocols, the stratospheric concentrations of anthropogenic chlorine and bromine are declining. Now, I'm not going to really take issue with any of this except to talk about some information that I think is relevant to the discussion. None of this negates what has been said by the Russians in terms of the value of the pyramid energy in cleaning up the ozone layer and therefore improving conditions here on the planet. But I do want to go through a couple of the sentences just to make some points, which you'll see their relevance here in a moment. First one is the first sentence. Ozone depletion is caused by human-related emissions of ODSs and the subsequent release of these gases into the atmosphere. I'm not going to doubt that is true on its face, but this sentence makes it sound like they are the only cause of ozone-depleting substances. I'm not sure that the research that's done here proves that. And furthermore, in the last sentence, that as a consequence of the Montreal Protocols, the concentrations of anthropogenic chlorine and bromine are declining. Again, they are probably declining, and I'm not going to say that there isn't some cause and effect relationship here, but the statements as they're pointed to almost lead one to the conclusion that the only way that the ozone layer became depleted was through the rise of these, and the only way that it's been brought under, or beginning to be brought under control, is through implementation of the Montreal Protocols. None of which I'm going to argue with in great detail, because I'm sure that there is a correlation, and a high correlation, between the existence of those chemicals in the stratosphere and the decline of ozone, and that if you decline or reduce those, that the ozone level is going to increase. However, I'd like to go over next some of the specific data that comes out of that research report, and you'll start to see why I'm questioning the thesis that these are the only ways to control the ozone layer. If you look at the next page, this is coming from the research. You'll see that historically the emissions of ozone-depleting substances, or ODSs, into the environment actually peaked at about 1988 or 1989, according to this data. And yet, as we go to the next page, you'll see that the top chart is basically a repeat of the one we just showed. But if you go down to the next chart on that page, the amount of stratospheric chlorine still continued to rise for a 10-year period. Now that's in concert with what they said, that these are long-lived gases. However, what's interesting is that the total ozone in the stratosphere continued to decline for 10 years after the reduction that began in emissions, and yet it took 10 years for that to begin to equate to a rise in global ozone. Again, I'm not questioning necessarily, given these are long-lived gases. However, I think it is curious, and maybe more than just purely coincidental, that the rise in total ozone occurred immediately after the construction of these pyramids, number one, and the Mir Space craft carrying these pieces of granite, and in Dr. Golod's words, creating that blanket or an energy cocoon. Now, with all that said, a lot of this is speculative, but I would think that it would certainly be valuable and worth considering, given the research that shows the huge impact on the energy fields around the pyramid, that perhaps further research should be done and funded by the United States or other Western countries. I would also point out that in this assessment of the 5 organizations, this is ostensibly an international group, but of the hundreds of scientists who participated in this, there were only 2 scientists from China, only 1 from India, and no scientists from Russia participated in the publication of this program. Now, I'm not suggesting necessarily that there's a politicization here, but I do think that alternative explanations of this positive result in the reduction of the ozone may have left out possible alternative solutions to this issue as well. So I think this is still a topic that is up for debate. I have not found any of the research so far that Dr. Golod and his team have done that I've been able to replicate that has not turned out to be replicable. It's just that these exercises are not replicable except by international organizations, so it's kind of hard to know what to think of this. But my feeling is more research into this area would be beneficial, along with obviously other major fields of research in terms of environmental and health remediation. Hope this has been helpful. If you have any ideas or comments on this, please feel free to give me a call. Please let your friends know about our webpage, onlypvcpyramids.com, and our YouTube page, Only PVC Pyramids. Hope this was helpful, and you have a great day.